Good morning, everyone. I do understand that I'm standing between lunch and the showcase opening up, so we will talk briefly, but excited to share with you kind of the journey for MasterCard in adoption of virtual reality, especially in the training space, looking at that as one of our core technologies that helps us advance what we're doing within training. So training is an extremely valuable, extremely critical piece for any corporation, but for MasterCard specifically too, in helping our market viability. As soon as you acquire talent, it's on the company corporation to ensure that you develop and curate and cultivate that talent so that they can meet the challenges not only for today but going into the future as well. So there's significant challenges or hurdles that we're coming up against. We have been over the past several years in the training space, and it's only being exacerbated based on globalization and expansion of companies, especially as MasterCard, as we've grown internationally quite a bit. So doing it at scale without losing effectiveness is a critical component for any training engagements that we do. So keeping that in mind, there's going to have to be significant innovations that come online to help us achieve that. A lot of those will be technology based, but there's going to be several that's not, but the majority of those that are in the technology space are undergoing a lot of scrutiny, just like training is, in that training is undergoing scrutiny for effectiveness at scale, being able to deliver content to the constituents that they can take that's meaningful, that they can produce positive impact post the training engagement. So the technologies that are coming online that we're looking at in the space, such as immersive technologies, are under similar scrutiny in that answering questions of the why this, why now, and what's possible. So it's important for us, and it was for us in adopting this, as well as help promoting that story, understanding where we're at as far as technology evolution, where we've been and where we're going. So I actually love the story of the creator of the board game chess, and ultimately the story that tells with exponential growth. So if you're not familiar with the story, there's several variations of it. The one I'm most familiar with is the one where the creator of the game of chess takes it to the ruler of India and presents his newfound innovation. The ruler of India loves the game, loves the strategy, and ultimately says to the creator, you can name your prize. Whatever you want, name it, it's yours. So the creator of the game of the chess said, hey, I'm a humble person, I just want rice as payment for it. But we'll do it in kind of a unique fashion in that we'll do 1 grain of rice, there's 64 pieces, or 64 squares on the chessboard. So we'll take 1 grain of rice, we'll put it on the first square, and we'll double that every time. So 2 on the second, 4 on the next, 8 on the next, and we'll continue to double whatever the previous box was with all the subsequent ones. So as you get closer to the 32 mark, or about halfway into the chessboard, it's relatively inconsequential in that you can solve or deliver on that promise or that prize with a couple handfuls, a sack. As you get to the 32 piece or chess marker, it's essentially a large field of rice. You can accomplish that through a couple boatloads or several carts. So seemingly inconsequential, but as soon as you start to get to that second half of the chessboard is where it starts to go crazy, and the numbers start to expand exponentially. So a couple rows into that chessboard, you start to get to the rice equivalent of more than what the country of India could produce at the time. You start to get to that 64 mark, the last square on the chessboard, and it's a mountain of rice higher than Mount Everest. It could be enough rice that it covers the entire continent of India for a couple meters deep, but showing the exponential growth. But about the halfway point in the chessboard is where it really starts to take off. And if we look at emerging technologies, we look at things that are expanding rapidly, this starts to explain, if you can illustrate where we might be on that chessboard, helps us to understand where we've been, where we're going. MIT professors Andrew McAfee and Eric Bjorfson also drew another comparison or parallel to this with Moore's Law to help us wrap our brain around where the technology and innovation is going. So Moore's Law, the premise that our computing power, the amount of integrated chips on an integrated circuit, which gives us the power and the computing power to do the things that we want to do, doubles about every 2 years. So a similar comparison in that it doubles. Technologists that subscribe to kind of this illustration of explaining exponential growth and technologies and advancements in innovation are projecting that we're somewhere around just beyond the halfway point in the chessboard. So that would start to explain some of the things that we've seen over the past 5 to 10 years, in that we've seen crazy technology, sci-fi related technology, smartphones, self-driving vehicles, crazy stuff in the immersive worlds that we thought were only relegated to our fantasies, that have now started to come to fruition, started to come online. And if we subscribe to this ideology that we're about just beyond the halfway point of the chessboard, and that exponential growth is achieved on that second half, everything that we think we've seen up to this point, we've seen nothing yet. We think we're living through devices now, we've seen nothing yet. So that promotes several things for possibilities, as we're seeing these technologies involved in them, have hope for them. What we think we know now about it potentially is even far beyond what it will be here pretty soon, as it expands pretty rapidly. Where this kind of intersects with training is, it's another development that's happening with training and engagement and education, is it's going through a similar revolution, or a need to evolve as well. So finding unique ways, better ways to connect with people with engaging content that they can take that's meaningful and produce positive change. So as they're trying to find our way or our place in the future of whatever that looks like, and how do we actually deliver training and engagement and content mirrored up with technologies, it's important for us to look at these and understand where we're at, what's possible, what's coming. So those technologies, those innovations that come online, they're going to have to address kind of 3 core critical things that we're experiencing as far as training challenges. Some of those being capacity, engagement, and scalability. So capacity kind of being broken up into 2 segments, time and attention. So time being, first, in order for you to train staff effectively, you have to garner their attention. You have to get them involved. You have to peel them away from the time sucks that they have, that they're currently engaged with. So most people already have a tough time keeping up with their email. They can't keep up with it. They've got time constraints. They've got projects. They've got deadlines. They've got back-to-back meetings. So the first hurdle for any training engagement, you have to peel them away from whatever keeps the lights on in their primary engagement, just to engage in whatever your content in. And in order to do that, part of it has to be compelling. It has to be something that captures their attention. So that's the other half of the equation, and it's probably one of the larger pieces. Because you can do things like make it mandatory training and get them to engage and force them to engage, but the attention is half the battle. Attention to get them sucked into it to where they're engaged in the content, and they process it, consume it, and do something meaningful with it on the back end. That's half of the challenge. In order to do that, you have to make it engaging, make it realistic, do things that capture their attention, keep them engaged, keep them sucked into the experience, and then it also has to be scalable as well. So at MasterCard, we live by the philosophy that if it doesn't scale, it doesn't matter. We've grown so much as in a company internationally that if we're going to adopt a technology or innovation or something that we're going to bring into the ecosystem, it has to be able to touch the greater expanses of our population. It doesn't mean that we won't do it, it just means it's going to get less attention. So that's a critical component. So traditional methods of scaling, training content have revolved around, we'll create a really cool video and people will watch it and they'll learn a bunch, and then we'll check the box as far as delivering training. So actually people hope it's a video so they can put it on this screen while they check their email on the other one and still get credit. Or maybe you're on to that game and you're going to do like an e-learning and you're going to make it gated to where they have to click through the slides and then they get a quiz at the end. I'll put that on the other screen as well while I build my PowerPoint or focus on some of the other work, and I'll click through and hopefully the questions are intuitive enough that I can get my 70% and I'm done with the training. So this is a consistent problem that how do you scale training that's meaningful? How do you capture their attention? If we're engaging that type of training, that's a solution that we're using for scalability. We're just checking a box. It's not really meaningfully engaging them and producing anything on the back end of it. So scalability, if you're looking at, well, I need to do something that's more meaningful and go back to instructor-led trainings. Much more effective if I put you in a room with other people and I'm standing there and I'm engaging with you, or I put you to where I'm actually engaging with another person, way more effective than like an e-learning or a video. It's just not scalable, it's not cost effective. You're never going to get the travel and entertainment budget to actually go send those instructors all over the world. So scaling that is not necessarily an option for us, even though we know it's more effective. So digital solutions have been around for quite some time. So the e-learnings, the videos, digital solutions allow for scalability, low cost at scale as well. They're immediate. The effectiveness is really where it's starting to lack. In the early stages, it was more engaging, but several things have driven attention and effectiveness away from it. Part of the effectiveness shortfalls is a lot of those methodologies were only engaging the prefrontal cortex, in that the main part of the brain that processes detailed information. There's challenges with only engaging that prefrontal cortex. It's leaky, it's subject to bias, memory issues, capacity issues, attention issues. Engaging the brain holistically has always been something that we know that is most effective. Immersive training is most effective. If I want you to learn something, I take you, go put you in an environment, you're gonna know, if you're immersed in it and surrounded by the content, you're gonna know and understand that much greater than if I'm standing up here giving you a PowerPoint. It's just, that's not cost effective, it's not scale, it's potentially dangerous. So looking for solutions that can help us achieve that and that we engage population. It's digital in nature, so it's easily scalable, lower cost, but you solving the effective piece is where the answers lie for the future of training and innovation. So it starts to get into our story of adoption of virtual reality. So we ended up having a specific training piece of content that had been available for about 7 years. And we started to get requests from the regional teams, hey, can I get this type of training from you? It was a red flag for us in that we had had multiple methods for training that content, videos, instructor-led training, PowerPoints, e-learnings. It's just what we found is majority of the MasterCard staff never even knew it existed. And when you did find that one or two people that they're like, oh yeah, I remember going to that, like, oh, talk to me, that's awesome. Talk to me about what you learned, what you took away. They couldn't articulate anything beyond that. So it was a huge red flag for this. It set us on a quest for what's out there. Look at emerging technologies, go scour the earth for how could we potentially do this better now, and where should we be in the next 4 to 5 years. So found virtual reality kind of so that was starting 2016 to 2017, found a virtual reality company, HTX Labs, that we partnered with in the fall of 2017, did a virtual reality pop-up lab in the bowels of the MasterCard operations headquarters in St. Louis. So we're testing 2 things when we did the virtual reality simulations, and the proof of concept was we took the training content and mirrored it based on traditional training methods to test retention, not only engagement, retention, and then retention over time. And then we're also evaluating it in virtual reality as a technology. So what was the user experience? Were people attracted to it? Did they get sick? Did they like it, not like it? So that if we chose to do anything other than that, so point that technology somewhere else, would it be a good medium for us to use? So evaluating both of those components through the month of December, we put about 80 staff members through it, tried to get a good cross-section of people from the United States, international, old, young, male, female, had 4 executives come through. Overwhelmingly positive response from that POC. Enough so that the head of HR and purchase, which is our corporate headquarters in New York, wanted to see what we had been developing and working with, packaged all up, put a pop-up lab up in purchase headquarters. Head of HR came through, the CEO found out what we were doing, wanted to see it as well. So the CEO, Ajay Banga of MasterCard, came down. We demonstrated multiplayer in that as well. So we had one team in Houston, one team in purchase, logged in, could interact. Ajay loved the concepts, loved what he saw, talked about it, promoted it, wanted us to build something and start to kind of build the foundation of the program. He wanted the global board of directors and the executives to see it. We have Innovation Week in the spring to where all of MasterCard gets together for a week and showcases, both for internal and external clients, different innovations that we're all working on. So we rapidly developed about 40,000 square feet of MasterCard headquarters, layered in a couple of training components, layered in other suggestive use cases or things. So have MasterPass on a smartphone that you can go through and pick up objects and do a simulated virtual marketplace, and it registers when you scan that. It text messages the developer to show the interactions between the digital and the real worlds. So just other suggestive things out of that. So I got the build about a week before I was supposed to take it and show the global board of directors. And I needed to test it, so I was bringing in some of the interns that had never been to purchase before. They were going to be up there in a few weeks. So put them in the headset, and this is where the first kind of pivot was born, in that we were specifically looking at it from a perspective of training, specifically that training content and maybe some other ideas. So the interns put it on and like, oh my God, this is purchase. And they're good, well, that's where the employees enter and that's where the coffee shop is and this is what the lobby looks like and playing with things. And so it was an aha moment for us of another potential use case of tours, onboarding, familiarization. They were familiarizing themselves with the space before they'd ever been there. I talked to them a couple weeks after they got back. They're like, oh my God, we already knew where everything was. We walked around, we had already become familiar with that space. So it gave rise or birth to a bunch of other use cases. We give tours of special compartments and innovation things that we've done at MasterCard. So different teams and operation centers and things at MasterCard, physical tours, almost on like a once or twice a week basis, especially at St. Louis, Security Operations Center, Fusion Center, Cyber Range. Those are very atom-based in that it physically requires you to be there at the time of the tour in order for you to be able to see this innovative, cool thing that MasterCard's done, and then it's disruptive to business. And so very little scalability, putting it in virtual reality, layering in that content so that you can actually take those tours, expands that exponentially and allows us to showcase that to a much greater population, as well as the advantages of things that you can do in virtual reality. So for the first 2018, so going into that first year was really demo, explore. The more people that we had touch the virtual reality simulations, the more additional use cases that pivoted away from training, but also increased training. So other things that we built out for training, sales certification, so putting on a headset, voice activated where they're sitting across from an executive and they're actually having to pitch MasterCard products and have the knowledge base and they're graded, as well as the scenario pivots based on what they say. They get graded on their sales certification or knowledge. So it's a beta version, negotiations and influence training where you're stranded on an island and there's 4 other personalities that all have a difference of opinion about what to do next. And you have to walk up to them, listen to them, engage them, and you can influence them to either work together or not. So building different layers of soft skills. So taking these elements, coupling them with training content and non-training content, more broader applications, was a critical piece as we evolved and continued to build this program, build simulations, expose the population. We took it over to India, put a number of staff there, took it over to Singapore, put a number of staff there, looking at scaling it. It's actually developed the foundation of what will be an enterprise-wide virtual reality beyond just training, but there's layers and integrations beyond that go more into the workplace. And that takes us kind of into the next phase. So learning from the successes that we had, as well as from just the challenges that we experienced, the areas that we're going to be focusing on for next year are going to capitalize on some of those. One of the big pieces is scalability. So based on the equipment, we tested out several different pieces of hardware for us and consistently ran into scalability challenges. We don't have a virtual reality team. We have people who are wearing multiple hats. So if we're going to scale that internationally, globally to our staff for both enhancing of work as well as training, we had to have some solutions on board so that we could actually do that. A big focus of Q1, Q2, we're in the process of purchasing several headsets, standalone 6DoF headsets that will be doing a proof of concept internationally in multiple locations. We'll be testing multiplayer as a core foundation, not only multiplayer as far as training and engaging in the same space, but also for workplace meetings. We'll also be layering 2 or 3 different training components onto that proof of concept. Complementary products are a huge piece that we learned out of this. So adopting innovation is a challenge that we all have, no matter what the technology is. You've got the core team that's responsible for sustainability of whatever the business is, the BAU, if you will. And then you've got the innovation, the cool, shiny things over here to try and integrate that in while they're all overworked is a consistent challenge for all of us, no matter what the innovation or technology is. So finding key areas where we can partner and complement those existing products. So taking the virtual reality simulations, they can be a standalone experience, but finding ways that we can actually ingest that and where it complements an existing process or training or engagement. One of those being, so we have instructor-led trainings that are incredible. People go there 2 or 3 days, get a lot of great knowledge. As soon as they walk out of the room, they're back to answering emails, back to the daily grind, and forget all of that. We have no reoccurring way that's scalable and cost-effective to consistently allow them to refine those skills. Virtual reality will help solve that. So scenario-based training that augments or complements whatever that training scenario is, that they can go back at any time. It's bit-based in that it's zeros and ones, so it's perfect at scale. You can deliver it across the globe, and it's the same consistent experience, and they can develop it at their time, not necessarily be locked into a specific time and place. So several components with that. So the complementary products will be a deliberate focus for us to partner both with external vendors and internal departments to help develop that metrics and ROI. There's going to be a significant focus on developing that and measuring what we do from a neuroscience perspective. Partnering with Todd Maddox is being onboarded to help us design and craft some of that, but really giving a deliberate focus to capturing the metrics, being able to tell that story from an ROI perspective of the viability of not only existing, but also future development. So exciting times for us. If we all agree, and for us in the training world, we've known since the beginning of time as far as knowledge sharing, sitting around a campfire has been the oldest method of knowledge transfer for us. And if that's been the oldest method of knowledge transfer, the immersive technologies essentially are poised to be the most effective. And that, for us, is extremely valuable, extremely exciting, and will have implications not only in the training, but the workforce in general. So I'm a bit over time, apologize. Thank you very much, guys. Enjoy.